EMAX has been a generous supporter of the drone community, of Ready Set Drone and SpinUp for a long time. So without any further ado, please welcome Cornell Herg with EMAX.
Thank you, thank you. So I'm the marketing director for EMAX, and what's pretty interesting about working for the FPV industry in a while, especially in the marketing realm, and a small company with EMAX when it comes to R&D, is we do wear a lot of hats. And one of the most interesting things to me over the years has been just a lot of the behind the scenes and the thought that goes into what goes into making these FPV drones. Because it's very different than a lot of more traditional hobbies. We take, say, RC cars, for example, or RC airplanes, a lot of more traditional RC hobbies. The experience that you're getting from those things are, say, you have a favorite plane. So you buy your favorite plane scaled down. And the value that that product's giving you is you're experiencing your favorite plane in a scaled down version. Same thing with RC cars. When it comes to FPV drones, we don't have that backup. When it comes to designing an FPV drone, funny enough, it actually comes a lot more like game design. And that was one of the most interesting things coming into EMAX and working on these drones over the years, that it's really brought in a very different perspective when it comes to product design. So what kind of experience are we talking about? What are common problems that product designers have when it comes to designing something that's solely based off experience? Are there actually any product designers here? I'm curious. Anyone, maybe engineers perhaps? Okay, there we go. I'm the marketing guy, so I'm the guy you all hate. I get it. It's okay. But trying to get chummy with the engineers, I'm trying my best to relate a lot of this experience that we've learned over the years and trying to make it a little more consumable for people to understand, right? And that's why engineers hate me, because it's never that simple. But I'm sure for a lot of engineers, the thing that you guys hate the most is the fact that consumers generally don't know what they want. Consumers think they know what they want. They say they want X and Y, but in reality, they actually want A and B. They just don't know how to word it, and they try to put it in technical lingo. So I have a term for those people. I call them spec chasers. People who judge products entirely off of a spec sheet. And that tends to be the big bane for a lot of product designers, because people are going to be looking for this spec sheet when the average person doesn't know that the art of engineering is for everything you give, there has to be something that you take away. There has to be a balance to everything. An example of, say, spec chasing, we'll use cars for this example. Let's say a hypothetically perfect car, super high horsepower, we'll say like 600-700 wheel. We'll say super fast 0 to 60, we'll say 2 seconds. Something crazy, right? Let's also make it luxurious, comfortable, roomy. That sounds like a perfect car, right? Well, we do have something like that. We have electric cars. But you tell me, are electric cars really all that great? You're going to have to give up a lot of things. You're going to have to give up, for example, reliability. What's going to happen as the batteries age in time? They begin to have voltage sag. Sure, you have a fast 0 to 60, but guess what happens? Electric cars always lose a drag race. Why? Well, you have battery sag. The harder you're pushing that throttle, your voltage sags down. We all know this from drones. So electric cars, they look fast on the spec sheet, but are they actually fast? No, not really. So this is why it's a big problem, is when people judge products based on the spec sheet. And there's so many things you give up. You give up, even with electric cars, you give up safety. You give up, for example, batteries. When they get damaged, we all know in the hobby, we're sitting on a bomb. So you're going to be giving up a lot of things like safety and whatnot just for that little bit of spec sheet, that little web page that says that this car is exactly what you were looking for. So this ties into what I've learned on what makes a good product experience. And the trick is to finding the middle ground between what people say they want, what do people actually want, and why do they say they want it. And those are some pretty key things we have to look for that we've learned over the years. So how do we at EMAX approach product design? Well, we've learned a lot of things, and I'll just go over some pretty common points, a lot that's heavily discussed in the hobby, and kind of what we've learned over the years. So a big thing for EMAX and the FPV hobby, everyone loves talking about weight. Weight is really important, right? Obviously, lighter the drone, it's more nimble, it's more acrobatic, it feels great. Everyone says they want the lightest weight motor for the maximum performance, lightweight frames. But what do people actually say when they want weight? What is the unsaid here? Does anyone have any ideas? Because hypothetically, we could just slap some motors on a toothpick. That's lightweight, right?
And the wind would blow it everywhere.
It would blow it everywhere.
Yeah, when you have a lightweight drone, I remember getting like one of my first drones and flying it through the house, and all it took was going past an air vent in the house.
Right.
And just the blast from the air vent took it out of the sky.
Exactly. So that's right. What they're saying for any on the live stream is, yeah, when you have something too light, it can actually hurt your experience. You get thrown around in the wind. Any kind of airflow distracts you. Also, another big thing is when you're super, super light, you also lose out on durability. Like I said, if we made a toothpick fly, well, one crash and, that wasn't very fun, was it? So what people actually say when they want something that's lightweight and they're spec chasing weight is, actually, we want a tank, but make it as lightweight as possible. And that's where the engineers have to come in and find what that middle ground is. So another thing is performance. Everyone's like, oh, I want the fastest drone, right? Of course. Obviously on that spec sheet to say you got the fastest thing, hitting over 100 miles an hour, etc. People love that, right? People say they want performance, but here's what we quickly learned at EMAX. You see, camera people, video people probably know this. When you want something to look fast, you put the camera low to the ground. But the problem with FPV is we're high up in the air. The average person, I guarantee 99% of people cannot tell the difference between 80 miles an hour and 120 miles an hour when you're 100 feet up in the air. You just cannot tell that difference. So we have to instead employ tricks to make people feel like it's a performance drone, make it feel like it's fast and exciting and fun. So there are tricks to that. And this is actually where it's a little interesting and kind of my personal little gripe with EMAX a little bit is EMAX doesn't like deploying some of these tricks. A very common one, for example, is a lot of competitors, they'll have their drones be really, really loud. How do they do this? Well, they use really inefficient propellers. When propellers are really loud, that is actually wasted energy. As a lot of aerodynamic people know, I'm sure I see some people nodding their head. Loud drones, you're inefficient. It's actually not a very high performance drone. But for us at EMAX, a lot of people know and a lot of reviewers have commented how EMAX drones are incredibly quiet. And in that realm, that's where a lot of people have said, oh, our drones feel a little slower, even though we're actually much faster than the competition. And that's where, again, this is where it's perception and it's about experience. And for us, at least our engineers at EMAX, they do choose to stand their ground, and that's kind of where we go. We try to find a middle ground, but we do still lean a little more towards performance, to a fault to a certain extent, but it is our decision. And a last thing would be a very big thing I just talked about, efficiency. Efficiency is so heavily talked about. Everyone's talking about the most efficient design. What's the most efficient propeller, efficient motor? And most people don't even know what efficiency is. So here's a very watered down example of efficiency. Say hypothetically, you have a drone that can fly for 10 minutes and cover about 5 miles of distance in that time. Now we have another drone that can fly for only 5 minutes, but cover 10 miles of distance in that time. What's the more efficient drone? Obviously the one that can cover more distance in a less amount of time. And that is something we very, very quickly learned at EMAX. Because when we first were pushing a lot of performance drones, we made hyper-efficient designs, and people kept complaining, oh, why is our flight time so slow? We would go to some of the top racing pilots even, and the racing pilots would be like, oh, it's too power hungry. So what we quickly learned is that when people spec chase efficiency, they don't actually look for efficiency, they're looking for flight time. Because people want a longer experience in the air. They don't truly mean they want the best performing thing. They just want something that feels powerful for as long as possible. And that's one of the big lessons we learned is focusing on flight time as opposed to pure efficiency. And that kind of wraps up in kind of what is our overall viewpoint our philosophy when it comes to designing drones. And a lot of it comes down to ease of use. Over the years, we've becoming more and more known as RTF kits and really great beginner drones because our goal is to bring the FPV experience to as many people as possible. So that's where we try to find the middle ground in all of these different aspects, weight, efficiency, performance. Have people have the experience of FPV, do what they know FPV drones can do, because all of us, we bit the bug from seeing those crazy videos online, flying down waterfalls, skyscrapers, whatever, that kind of got you hooked, drone racing, etc. Provide that experience to people and bridge that gap. Make these high quality controllers and goggles, make everything affordable, bridge that experience whereas people get better in their FPV hobby. We try to make sure that our things aren't thrown away. A lot of people have mentioned that our new goggles, for example, they're removable. So that way, even when you buy high-end goggles, you can still use these little monitors with your friends, etc. And that kind of is the philosophy for us, is we want to make sure that our products are able to reach as many people as possible and make it easy for everyone. And that about sums it up. Thank you, guys. Any questions?
So with technology sort of plateauing recently, it's getting further and further the gap, like everybody releasing new iPhones every year, and there's just minor bumps, GoPros, even the DJI drones, there's just tiny bumps. How do you guys decide with stuff like the Baby Hawk and the next version, how long you want to wait till you put it out there for us?
Yeah, so absolutely. If for anyone who's been in this hobby for a number of years, you've probably noticed a lot of the industry is kind of slowing down in certain areas. And especially like for us, EMAX, we don't release as many products as we used to. Instead, now we just focus more on just long-term use, making things more durable, upping the quality of things. And just kind of, there is an aspect of waiting for what the next big technology is, which currently is HD. Who ends up winning on top? That's a very big question. But currently, our RTF kits, we have HD0 is what we're doing. Like you said with the Baby Hawk, we have DJI. So we're definitely trying to branch out, see where things go there. But I do believe in the future, what needs to happen with FPV is kind of what I'm saying is bridging that gap, trying to bring FPV closer and closer to the masses. We kind of see the joining of that where DJI is trying to be more FPV-like, whereas as you can see with us at EMAX, we're trying to become even a little more DJI-like with our whoops, making them durable. We have the Easy Pilot as well that has altitude hold, one stick flying. We purposely made that drone to be even easier than a DJI to fly, just to help bridge that gap. So I kind of eventually see kind of a melding between things, possibly in 10 years. So a lot of what the FPV industry is, none of the companies are that massive like DJI, where there's these big internal development teams that can focus on software. Software is probably the biggest hurdle FPV has right now. No one really has the capital to invest in a big software team. So because of that, a lot of the tech is based on open source. The Easy Pilot, for example, I mentioned, we did build that software for that drone from the ground up internally, but that was just a lot of resources, and that's why it's very difficult. We haven't made an Easy Pilot 2 yet, just because it's so resource intensive.
So I've got a couple questions for you.
Yeah.
DJI apparently a strong arm in some of the ready-to-fly manufacturers to drop the others, as in HD0 or Voxnail, in favor of their O3 unit, especially now that they come out with the light version of the same thing. Do you feel anything about that?
Officially, I can't really comment too many things on that, but we can go ahead and talk a little bit afterwards if you want.
Okay, well, can I implore that EMAX will start putting out power kits with no VTX in it whatsoever, to where consumers can fit them with the VTX of their choice?
Yeah, in that regard, I can confirm that is in the works right now. Yeah,
Very good.
that tends to be the current trend in the hobby right now, as a lot of these kits are just
Flexibility.
yeah, it's just the flexibility because of how high cost it is to commit to something.
All right, so with China becoming the pariah, right, globally, and DJI unfortunately being caught up in that mess and having bans put in it, and countries starting to, not want to sell the product and want to put it out, the drone industry is losing one of their biggest, marketing systems. As a marketer, right, where do you see companies like EMAX and others that can come up with products to fill the gap if, for instance, DJI is not available anymore?
So that's a hard one, because like I was mentioning earlier, the big hurdle for the FPV industry to tackle right now is software. That's very difficult for the size of this industry. So I know that for example, there was Skydio, for example, that was an American competitor to DJI, and even they recently shut down making camera drones, and they're just going exclusively military. Yeah, I know, right? You can't even fly that at night. The problem is the scale of things just aren't there, and I would believe that what would fund such a big technological endeavor would have to be military backed.
Can you speak on whether EMAX has any plans to make non-box goggles, like regular type goggles?
So that gets floated around. We talk about it quite a bit. The issue is, as we try to make products a lot more accessible and more affordable, we decided to go the box route. Actually, back when we were even just talking about redesigning goggles, we went that route we had, because the big issue with normal goggles is prescriptions for people who wear glasses. So we ended up going with the current box goggles, where the monitor pops out so you can attach to your controller and fly it DJI style, because that seems to be kind of the best compromise. And one of the big issues with EMAX, well, not an issue, but one of the things with EMAX is our style of manufacturing is it has to be large quantities, as opposed to, say, some of the smaller companies where they can produce smaller amounts. Because normally for us, like our manufacturing plant, like at peak, can have like 600 employees. So we have to do these large MOQs that hit as many people as possible. Otherwise, for us to make a more niche high-end goggle, we'd probably be higher priced than a lot of competitors.
How is EMAX being affected by RAD, and what is your response to it?
Remote ID isn't a problem for us because all our drones are under 250 grams. It's something we were very proactive in to make sure we fall within legal bounds. Even that's why we push 3.5 inch very aggressively. I do think that if FAA really starts to clamp down on things, 3.5 inch probably might be where a lot of the hobby tends to go.
My question's on motors. For the most part, EMAX makes stuff for about 5 inch and under.
Mhm.
Is there any plans for them making motors for bigger bigger prop size, like up to 9 inch?
Yes, actually, we do have things like that. Just with EMAX, our R&D takes a lot longer than a lot of smaller companies, but we do have things in the works right now.
Cornell, thank you. He got in his car and drove all the way here from Houston to give this presentation. So give him a big round of applause. Thank you. Really appreciate it. I do hope you get to fly a little bit.